Hi, welcome to the video on Book 4. One of the key parts of Book 4 is actually near the end. It's actually a very important book culturally. Had a lot of references later on to it. One of the most famous interactions of characters in all of literature between Dido and Aeneas, the love affair. But if you read the rest of the Aeneid in English, you realize that this is actually a tragedy. In book 1, you get hinted at this when you look at the construction of Carthage. Virgil spends a couple lines just specifically talking about the theater being built and the stage that was to come. And I think that you're supposed to get an idea, since Dido comes very shortly after that you're supposed to be seeing this as some kind of play, and you can not really think of it as a comedy. Nothing is happening that would indicate a comedy, so you're thinking tragedy. And of course, every tragedy has some great up, and then a very big down, if you will, a great fall. And Dido is the one who is kind of the subject of our fall here. She, in book 1, is of course shot with the Cupid's arrow, so she falls in love with Aeneas. Aeneas, being a guy in the ancient world who left his wife in Troy, is available, and he's pseudo royalty. So he becomes an attractive candidate for Dido, but he's also somebody who can take on a girlfriend at this point without saying, oh, he cheated on somebody, because he did not. His wife is probably dead, or probably dead in the fall of Troy. So anyway, you see here the Lament of Dido, and so this is kind of skipping to the end of book 4, where they fall in love. They have a very awkward situation where Dido thinks they're married, but Aeneas doesn't really have a clue that it's a marriage, and so it's kind of a very awkward situation. And then when Aeneas has to leave because he has to go to Italy, it becomes an extremely awkward situation with Dido, because Dido is wondering why he's leaving, and he has to go because that's his fate, his destiny. The gods are literally like swooping down and telling him to leave. And so poor Dido is kind of left with the same absolute obsession with Aeneas, because she's been shot with Cupid's arrow, and she can't deal with the fact that he's leaving. And so this lament is kind of her, after she has decided that since Aeneas is leaving, her idea is to then commit suicide, because she can't live without him. Now, before you judge on this or anything, note that in a tragedy, people have to die at the end, or it has to be a great downfall. And also, a lot of times things are taken kind of out of proportion. Of course, in the real world, right, this is fiction. If they're in the real world, this is not even close to an appropriate reaction, nor would anybody argue it is. But just keep in mind, before you criticize Dido for that decision, she has been shot with Cupid's arrow. In the ancient world, in mythology, that is such an enormous obsession and attraction that there's literally nothing else that's important to you when you have it. And so, while she has a kingdom to worry about, she realizes, because of the Cupid's arrow's influence, that she cannot go on even with that kind of glory. And that's kind of what also makes this a tragedy, is that she was such a powerful figure and had such a future as a leader of Carthage, because her husband was killed by her brother, and this is kind of her using the wealth of her husband to start a new thing. And she's doing a very good job, according to Virgil in the other books. So just keep in mind the context that this is in before we read it, and keep in mind that she is kind of already decided upon suicide when you read through this. So we can get started with some of the Latin here. And I think that this is probably some of the most beautiful Latin. And before we get started reading, just keep in mind, I highly encourage you to go look up Jesse Norman's performance of the Purcell opera called Dido and Aeneas, and she plays Dido, and this part I think is such beautiful, so beautifully done by Jesse Norman. That you really do need to watch it. It's pretty incredible to watch her performance of Dido, trying to say like, I hope I'm remembered, but I also was given a bad lot. So like she has this famous line, "Remember me, but forget my fate." Anyway, we'll get to the Latin now. So we'll get started up here. Ipsa mola manibusque pius altaria juxta. Unum exucta pedem vinculis investe recinta. Testatur moritura Deus et consciefati sidera. Tum si quod non aequo foeder mantis, curae numen abet justum que memorque precatur. So we can get started with those lines there. We start off, ipsa refers to Dido. So Dido, she herself. Mola, of course, agrees with altaria and juxta, manibus with peace. So we have with pious hands, or purified hands, hands that would do any kind of like religious work. And also more ablatives here, and with grain near the altars. And then we get to more description of Dido. She is I guess having been deprived from chains in one foot. In other words, she has one foot that's kind of like chained up and the other foot is not. She's kind of having been loosened in her cloak. In other words, she loosens up her garments a little bit. She has one foot chained. Anyway, she swears to the gods. Moritura is modifying Dido again. About to die. It's a nice future participle with the UR there. And knowledgeable of she swears to the gods and to the stars, conscious of fate. So the conscia goes with sidera, the other accusative with deos. That's what this ad is connecting to, accusatives there, and sidera. So let's clean this up a little bit here. All right, so she swears to the gods about to die, and to the stars conscious of fate. All right, tum, then. C starts a clause. Quod is accusative or nominative. I quod goes with foedere as an ablative. We have genitive, genitive curae. It could also be nominative plural, but since the next word is nominative, we're going to go ahead and say that jukura is genitive. Habat's a verb, and then since we get these quays, we kind of keep it going a little bit. Note the numen is neuter, so therefore justum and memor can go with it. So if a divine will has quod is actually aliquod, which means something, and then and what we're going to do is we're going to take cura and make it modify that something. So something of care. And then the care takes a genitive, the care of somebody. So if a divine will has something of care for a person loving, so a lover, but not just a lover, somebody loving in an unequal treaty. In other words, like this is somebody that loves, but there's no love back. It's not an agreement love. So this is what Dido is at this point, as I described earlier. She's one who loves Aeneas, but Aeneas does not love her. And so you have somebody amantis non aequo foedere, loving not with an equal agreement. Anyway, precatur, she prays to that god. That's just the last part. Then she prays. So we get here the next part. Nox erat. It was night. Et placidum carcebat fessa soporem corpora per terras, silvaeque et saeva quierant aequora, cum medio volvuntur sidera lapsu, cum tacet omnis ager, precudes pictae que volucres, quaeque lacus late liquidos, quaeque aspera dumis rura tenent, somno posita sub nocte silenti. I kind of love these lines. I find them very almost peaceful. I think you're supposed to. But anyway, it was night, nox erat. Et placidum carcebat fessa corporem, soporem corpora per terras. And so you get the fessa going with corpora, placidum going with soporem. So tired bodies, the nominative, seized, peaceful sleep. That's nice, huh? Through the lands. And Silva et Saiva Aequora, so the trees and the savage oceans, quierat rested. It's still kind of nice. Cum medio vulvuntur sidera lapsu. So your cum is actually a clause, even though it's followed by an ablative. I apologize. So when, in the middle of they're falling, they're dropping, the stars are turned. So when the stars are turned in the middle of their falling, you can imagine the falling stars being a real thing. Lapsu is like a sliding down. You think of how the Earth rotates and the stars look like they are either rising or falling, even though all we're doing is getting them from a different perspective. But it's a fall here. And it's supposed to describe kind of how the Earth turns, and then you get maybe something that started on the horizon is now in the upper part of the sky, and then it goes back down to the horizon. All right, cum tacet omnis ager, when every field is silent. Pecudes pictae que volucres. And you get here the sheep. Pecudes are the herd animals, any kind of sheep, and the birds having been, I guess, painted, so it's kind of like colorful birds, and colorful birds. Quaeque lacus late liquidos, quaeque aspera. So the quaeque. They create a nice little parallel there. So the quaeque makes a both and. So both the things which, and then we don't have a verb in this one, so we're going to have to gap it from this one. So tenet goes up here. The things which hold the widely the liquid lakes. I don't know why you need liquid in there, but that's fine. The lakes, and then the things which hold the aspera dumis rura, the rough with thorns countryside. And so this ablative kind of goes directly with the aspera, the rough with thorns countryside. Somno positae sub nocte silenti. They have been placed in silent sleep under the night. That's kind of nice. So we get this idea, this very peaceful, everything is resting paragraph. Of course, we know that, first of all, Dido, she's awake. She's doing a bunch of religious stuff before she, before she commits suicide. But and you can remember that Moratura up there is telling you, yes, she has decided to die. She says, "Me about to die," and so you get this very nice paragraph about how this is all happening in this kind of the still of the night. But Virgil, being very much inclined to write about nature whenever he can, he doesn't need to say, well, it's happening at night. He decides to give you a nice little artistic picture of everything kind of resting. All of the stuff is very peaceful, maybe including the Trojans. They're probably leaving and thinking everything is fine and peaceful. But I think the point is that the world is nice and peaceful. We kind of keep going with those creatures. They rested their cares, leniebat, and their hearts forgot of their labors. So in other words, when everybody goes to sleep, they kind of like are able to relax, and they're able to put away their cares and their work for a while. But then the reason that line is there is so you can say atnon, so but not. In felix anima poenisa nequam nam solvitur in somnos oculis vaut pectore noctem accipit in gemen ant curae russus quae resurgens saevit amor magno quirarum fluctat aestu. But not unhappy of her heart, Dido. Phoenissa is another name for Dido. Phoenissa. It means like the Phoenician, but we're talking about Dido. And never, neque umnam, and never. What did she relax? Volvator. Was she unwound into sleep? In other words, she couldn't relax. So we have this kind of like, most people are able to put away their cares and forget their labors. Ne quum nam solvitur in somnos. She is not unwinding in sleep. Solvitur means to untie, but it also means to relax. She is not relaxed into sleep. Ve is like que, just means or nor does she receive the night, and then two ablatives in her eyes or in her chest. Noctem accipit, nor does she receive the night. Ingeminant curae, her cares double. Ingeminat's cool because if you think of what Gemini, it means twins. Ingeminat is the verb for to make two of, so to double. So her cares double. Rursusque resurgens. Rursus means again. So and again, rising, raging. Saevits amor, love rages. Magno quirarum fluctat aestu. Magno agrees with aestu. Then she rises. Fluctat means to arise. She swells. It's kind of like it's a word for like the ocean getting bigger. Fluctat, also the word for wave is very much related. But anyway, she rises, with a great tide of anger. Erarum, the genitive, going with aestu, the tide. And so you see her compared to a raging river, raging like sea or raging river, which is kind of interesting, because everybody else is like so still and calm, and she uses words like resurgens, saevit, fluctat. She is very much active, growing, and raging. Cicadeo institit. Secum quita corde volutat. And so she begins in this way. Sica Deo insistit. Adeo means in this way, and so she begins in this way. And secum, with herself, ita corde volutat. She turns it over in her heart. In other words, she's like contemplating and kind of she's just gonna talk to herself here. En quid I go? See, what am I doing? Rursus, there's rursus again. But ne is a cool word. Ne, you can't really translate ne. It just tells you, hello, this is a question. And so it's like, is it again that this happens? Procos in ris a priores experiar. So again, will I go through this? In risa means like laughed at, having been laughed at. So again, will I, having been laughed at, experience again the procos priores, the same suitors as before, the suitors like before. So people were always trying to get to marry Dido, and she was always like, "No, thank you." So she's like, Am I going to do that again?" The answer is no, but that's besides the point. Nomadum que petam connubia suplex. And do I seek marriages of the nomads? The nomads, you think of nomads as somebody being nomadic, but they're actually a people in North Africa. They had a nomadic life. I think it's named after them. But they're like Numidians. Should I seek marriages of Numidians? Suplex means like kind of like humbly, so like begging them. Somebody who is knelt at an altar is suplex. So it's somebody who's like begging or like showing inferiority clearly on purpose. That is somebody who is suplex. Humble is a good word. So you have to imagine Dido like asking herself, "Am I gonna like go on my knees and beg these guys to marry me?" It seems like it's lower than her. Quos, going with the nomadum, whom ego sim totiens jam dedignata maritos. So anyway, whom I have rejected. Sim dedignata. It's subjunctive, but it doesn't actually translate very much differently. But it is deponent, so whom I have rejected as husbands now so many times, totiens. And so you get this like, do I have to like go back and like beg them, after I've rejected them so many times before Aeneas? So you can almost imagine that she's seeing this as like, well, now that Aeneas is gone, who else is there? But the problem is, again, like the Cupid's arrow does not apply to anybody, so Dido would not be satisfied. She has to be with Aeneas. That's kind of the whole point of this whole thing. Is that the answer to these questions is no, like, and you're supposed to know that the situation she's in is Aeneas or nothing. And so when she asks this question, as the reader, you're supposed to say kind of like, no, you cannot do that. And then here's the next question: Iliacas igitur classis at qualtima tucrum iusa sequar. And therefore, should I follow the Trojan fleets and the orders of the there's a genitive plural, the orders of the Trojans. So here we have some nice neuter plurals that make these accusative, iusa ultima, and then the as, and then this is actually a long is, which means it's an es, the ships. So the Trojan ships. So it's like, should I follow the Trojan ships and like all the last orders of the Trojans? Again, she's a queen. It's hard for her to say like, should I just like follow them and like follow their orders, be subsequent to somebody. I think that this is supposed to be an obvious answer, and that it is supposed to be no. Dido is not supposed to do that. Quia nauxilio juvat ante levatos, et ben napud memores veteris stat gratia facti. And so you gotta kind of like, is it because he, notice the change in subject to third person here with juvat, he rejoiced in my help, auxilio, ante levatos, before they were released. It's kind of like before them having been released, but it's hard to translate that in English. So because he rejoiced in help before they have left, and because he apud memores, veteris goes with facti, which goes with gratia, and so here's your verb, and he stood well in memories. For past deeds. In other words, like he was happy for my help, and he doesn't leave until until he like left. He was gonna bring like happy memories, and he did good things. So it's kind of almost like a consideration of Dido. Like, do I go with them? Perhaps everything was fine, and it could go back to that. All right. Quis me autem fac velle, sine ratibusve superbis in visam accipiet. Who? So we have our subject here. Subject, me is your direct object. Autem is just however. However, who? Fac velle. Fac velle is just like even if I wanted. It's make it to want. It's hard to translate in English. It's like even if I wanted, cause me to want it to. CNET, who would allow me? Who would allow me? Or, here's your way again, or ratibus superbis, with, on an arrogant fleet. Ooh, how about a proud, on a proud fleet, who, will they accept me, and then kind of gap me, and then in visam agrees with that gapped me, having been hated, or just hated me. So the Trojans, apparently, she thinks the Trojans don't like her. Aeneas might like her, but she doesn't think the Trojans do. I don't know, maybe she's onto something. There isn't too much evidence of that, other than the Trojans kind of getting, like antsy being in Carthage and being really like kind of gung ho to leave. But anyway, it's an interesting one. So, however, who will allow me, or who will accept me on their proud fleets? Me, a hated person. Ooh. All right. Nescis eu perdita nectum leo medonteae sentis peruria gentis. Alas, you do not know. But remember, she's talking to herself. So, alas, you don't know. Perdita. So, perdita is she's talking to herself, describing herself as ruined. So, alas, you do not know, ruined one. Anecdum, not yet. Do you not? There's a question. Do you not yet sense the inuria as your? By the way, I skipped that very long proper name. It goes with gentis, but periuria as your dio as a neuter plural. I'm sorry, I'm kind of losing my labeling. Trying to make sure I get through this. So do you not yet? Do you sense the treacheries of the race of Laomedontis? Laomedon's race. Laomedon is I think connected to Troy. So she's like, look, they're not good people, and she's talking to herself, of course, and she's like, you might not have like perceived their treachery yet. And so she's like, don't you see how awful they are? Like, why would you want to go with them? So she's kind of like, she's reeling in the thought of going with them immediately. She's like, oh, you don't know, like lost one. You're all confused. She's calling herself the lost one. Not yet do you sense their treachery. Or it's actually a question, like, do you not yet sense their treachery? Quid tum? What then? That's really all that says. What then? Sola fuga nautas comitabor avantis. We see here, sola is a nominative going with Dido. Fuga, though, is an ablative, so let's keep that one in mind. Nautas is accusative, comitabors are verb first person, and avantis is supposed to be avantes, going with nautas. And so we see here another question. Do I, or will I alone, sola going with the subject, which is I, will I alone go with the sailors rejoicing, go with the rejoicing sailors in flight? Again, she's kind of going back to the idea, like, maybe I should go with them. Anteris omnique manus stipata meorum inferar et quos Sidonia vex urbe revelli russus agam pelago et ventis dare vela eubebo. And so here we kind of have an ablative absolute to start off. Or, on means or, it's a question, or, and then Tyries with the Tyrians and every band, and then Maiorum kind of goes with it, of my people having been gathered around. So with the Tyrians and every gang of my people having been gathered around, should I be brought, and should I, so here we have this quotes clause, which is a giant direct object. It's those who, and Rursus is again. We've seen that a couple times, and then agam here is your subject and verb. You have your ablative of place here with pelago. So agam becomes your subject verb. And should I drive on the sea those whom I have hardly taken away from the Sidonian city. It's like how, like, people that I've like hardly like persuaded to leave their city to come help me. Et ventis dare vella eubebo, and will I order them to give their sails to the wind. Sorry, there's we should probably do some labeling. The dative wind here, infinitive, dare, vela is your direct object. It means sails, like of boats. It's neuter. I got a lot of neuter plurals in this passage. And there's an O ending, which is your subject and verb, I will order. All right. So, Quinn. I hate Quinn. What an interesting word Quinn is. It means something completely different every time, and it always confuses. So quin morere ut merita est. Oh dear. So it's like, why not die? Quin morere ut merita est, as you are deserving of. Note that ut without the subjunctive is just as, so why not die as you are deserving of? So so here's her kind of like flinging herself back to the other option of like, do I go with them or do I stay here and die? Ferro quaverte dolorem. So she's like, end the sadness, turn away the sadness with a sword. Yikes. So yeah, here again, Dido is like basically contemplating what it would mean to leave, and she doesn't like the idea. She's like, well, even if I like surround myself with Tyrians, like those people are going to be sad to have left. Like I could hardly get them out of their city to help me earlier, or with any other thing. So it's going to be impossible to have them go with me on a journey where I'm not even the ruler because I'll be following the orders of the Trojans. It's just not a good situation for Dido. Tu lacrimis evicta meis, tu prima furentem his Germana, malis oneras atqua bigis hosti. All right, so you. So are we changing subjects or are we talking to ourselves again? Well, in the second line we have Germana, which means sister. So I think she's talking to her sister who's not there, Anna, who's in book 4 before. So remember that Anna was the one who was like, yeah, go for it. It's good to love because you can enjoy yourself. Anyway, so we have two. You, evicta, just get rid of the A. It means the same thing as victa. Having been conquered by my tears, in the ablative there. Having been conquered with my tears. You, she's like very emphatic. You, prima, first. Sister, furentem is a D-O. His, malis, go together. Those are ablatives. And then oneras, there's your S ending that goes with the two. So you get onero, onerare, to burden. You first burdened gap of me here with the furentem. Burden me, raging. You burden me with these evils. Atqua bicis osti, and you tossed me to the enemy. Remember to gap your may again. That's pretty harsh. She blames her sister who kind of encouraged her to go out with Aeneas after she had doubts because she was like, oh, I had I'm really I'm really in charge and everything's good. And here's the big thing though. We're going to kind of bring up why she really is upset about this part at the very end here. Non liquid talami expertem sine crimine vitam deggere more ferae talis nec tangere curas non sevrata fides cineri promissa saceo. There it is. Tantos illa suo rumpebat pectore questus. Okay, well, let's see why she's so mad. It was not allowed. I think you have to gap another may here. What do you think? Yeah, I think so. So if you gap a may, that gives your direct object, and then you can have an indirect statement style, an ACI. It was not allowed that I do a thing, that I expertum talame, free from marriage, free of marriage. So your expertum takes a genitive, which is talame. Expertum, by the way, doesn't modify talame. It modifies may that you're gapping in there. All right, sine crimen vitam deggere, to carry on my life without blame, without any kind of crime, without any kind of mistake. So it was not allowed that I, free of marriage, carry on my life without wrong. In the custom of a wild thing, a wild fera is like a beast, in the custom of a beast. Anyway, she kind of has a double meaning here. She was like, I was able to do so much when I wasn't married, and dragged down with love, but it's also like living like a beast, because beasts are not as able, I guess, as humans to kind of form family units and love. Anyway, atalis nec tangere curas, and it is not allowed that I touch such great cares, and cares here might be pains, because kuras are like things that weigh heavy on your heart. So, it was not allowed that I not like experience such great pains. Atali, such pains. Non serata fides cinere promissa siceo. This is kind of one of the tough parts here. So the faith, if you gap an est with servata, which is a fourth principal part, you'll get a verb there, and then your subject is fides. So the faith was not kept. The faith having been promised to the ashes of Sichaeus. Now, here we go. Okay, so what is this like, the vow that she made to Sichaeus? First of all, Sichaeus is her former husband. Now, when he died, she promised that she would not remarry or to be in love again. And you have to remember that like these kinds of things are very sacred to the ancient peoples. Vows are something that you have to keep. They're like blood oaths a lot of times. So this is extremely important for Dido. And she was persuaded by Cupid's arrow, by her sister, by everybody, to break this promise with Aeneas. And look where it gets her. So we finally kind of understand this is kind of what she thinks is her hubris that led to her nemesis. She's kind of calling out the idea that she broke this promise as the reason that this has all happened. Anyway, I think that's a very interesting thing. So anyway, yeah, the guilt over this is just absolutely like driving this whole back and forth with Dido, with herself. Anyway, tantos illa, she herself, suo rumpebat pectore quaestos. So we get some very nice agreement patterns here. Tantos agrees with quaestos at the very end. Suo agrees with pectore. Nice chiasmus here. So she that woman burst rumpebat such laments from her heart. And so here we kind of conclude the lament of Dido. It's intense. And you can see the back and forth that she has in her mind, but ultimately what guilt is in her mind is like kind of ends the lament there. And you realize that if you're dealing with hubris and nemesis, she sees herself as committing the hubris of falling in love, and then her nemesis is that she must die. So here's a nice painting by Andrea Sacchi, The Death of Dido. It's very, very nice. You can see the sword pressed into her chest. She has not yet stabbed it through. She's just holding it there. She looks up at the sky, holding a handkerchief, like contemplating, doing this final lament before she dies. But look at this, the vivid red color, which maybe is supposed to remind you of blood, so the spilled blood. That's going to happen, but because everything else is so gray, it's very vivid. Also, it's the most passionate color, so you can see what she has to kind of have that red cloth around to show the passion that's driving this lament and her death itself. I think it's always a very interesting discussion to talk about Dido and what Virgil is trying to do with her as a character. You feel bad for her. I always feel bad for Dido as I read the Aeneid every single time. I've met people who think that she is unreasonable. She acts completely rashly, and she is a character that cannot handle real life, and it's a tragic flaw for her character. While that might be true, I don't think that the lack of sympathy is helpful in that interpretation. So I don't know. I would like to hear what you have to say about like a painting like this, or about the character of Dido, especially if you go ahead and read the rest of Book 4, either in English or Latin, and really get a sense for who she is in the first 6 books of the Aeneid. And finally, we get the actual death of Dido, where the sword is just through her heart. You'll see that as she screams and plunges herself onto her funeral pyre that she made for herself and plunged onto the sword, her handmaids are all just kind of like depressingly looking at her. And then the woman there in red and blue is Anna, her sister, who comes back after she's stabbed herself, and she's like, "What have you done? What are you doing? Oh no!" But one of my favorite little parts of this. Is Cupid is up here just kind of like flying away. He's kind of like, I've done my job, and he kind of just flutters off, being the ultimate cause of everything that has happened here. So it's another very good painting, but this is supposed to be me telling you how, just kind of how this ends. I hope you read the English of Book 4. I'm going to assign it, of course, for one of the assessments, but it's a very good read, and Dido's a very interesting character. Finally, to end, please, if you need to pause it and type all this out, or just find the file that I'm talking about and click on this. But Jesse Norman performing "When I'm Laid in the Earth," which is Dido's Lament by Purcell, is absolutely incredible. It's beautiful. You really should hear it, because she's dealing with her own mortality and her own fate, and we kind of continue this theme that fate is not always fair. We read in Book 2, The Fate of Laocoon, and how he has to die, even though he's done nothing wrong. And we see kind of the fate of Helen, who doesn't die, and it's unfair. And Aeneas sees the unfairness in Book 2 and realizes that he should enact some kind of justice, and he's stopped, of course. So fate is unfair. And I think that when you see the lament, you realize the unfairness of Dido's fate. You realize that she was great in a lot of regards, and because of Cupid and Anna and her whole situation, everything came tumbling down, and it was completely unfair. And so when you hear "remember me, but forget my fate," she is in a situation where that greatness is to be remembered. She was a very highly respected queen who ought to go down in history, and how to have her deeds remembered. But her ultimate fate is one that she should not want to define her. And I think that that's a very interesting concept, one of the ones that we have to remember, that when we think about the Aeneid as a commentary on what it means to be human. And anyway, thanks for watching the video. It's very long, I know, but I hope you got something out of it.